The emergency code. The text came through at 7:42 on a Tuesday, right in the middle of Daniel pouring himself a second cup of coffee, and it consisted of exactly one word. Blueberry. Daniel's hand did not shake. That was the strange part, the part he would think about later, how calm his body went, how the mug settled onto the counter without a sound, how his mind simply clicked into a gear he hadn't used in 11 years. His wife, Carol, was upstairs. The television was murmuring something about traffic on the 405. Outside, a sprinkler ticked against a neighbor's fence in steady, oblivious rhythm. Blueberry meant his daughter Emma was in danger and could not say so out loud. They had built the code together when she was 14, back when Daniel still traveled for consulting work, and Carol still believed, mostly, that this was all it was. Emma had asked him once, half joking, half serious in the way only a smart teenager can manage, what she should do if she was ever somewhere bad and couldn't just call the police. Daniel had looked at his daughter, sharp-eyed, watchful, more like him than he wanted to admit, and instead of brushing her off, he had taught her something real. A single innocuous word dropped into any ordinary conversation, any text, any voicemail. No follow-up needed, no explanation, just the word and he would come. They had never needed it, not once in 11 years. Emma had grown up, gone to college, fallen in love with a charming, soft-spoken architect named Marcus Wren, and gotten married in a backyard full of string lights and Daniel's carefully rehearsed toast about letting go. Daniel had shaken Marcus's hand at the wedding and felt nothing except the ordinary ache of a father watching his daughter drive off into a life he could no longer fully protect. He had been wrong about the nothing, it turned out. He just hadn't known where to look. Daniel picked the phone back up. His thumb hovered over the reply field for exactly 1 second before he decided against it. You didn't reply to Blueberry. You didn't ask, "Are you okay?" or "What's wrong?" or anything else that might show up lit on a screen someone else was watching over her shoulder. You went. "I need the car," he called up the stairs, already reaching for his jacket, already reaching, from long habit, for the flat case in the hallway closet that Carol thought held old tax documents. "Since when do you ask?" Carol laughed from the bathroom. "Emma needs help with something at the house." "I'll call you," Daniel said, and his voice was so even, so unremarkable, that Carol didn't even come to the top of the stairs. He was in the car 90 seconds later. To understand what Daniel did in the car during the 18-minute drive to his daughter's house in Lindenfield, you would have to understand what Daniel used to be, which was something even his own wife had only ever half understood. For 22 years, the man his neighbors knew as a mild, retired logistics consultant who coached Little League and complained about property taxes had been someone else entirely. An operator for a division of the government so quiet it didn't have a name people were allowed to say. The kind of man who got flown into places and didn't get flown out until the places were different than when he arrived. He had retired the way men like him retire, which is to say he had simply stopped being sent anywhere and had spent a decade rebuilding the muscles of an ordinary life. Barbecues, oil changes, arguments about thermostat settings. But some muscles don't go soft, they just go quiet. By the time Daniel turned onto Willow Court, he had already run through every version of what he might find, sorted by probability, the way he used to sort intelligence reports before a breach. Domestic violence was the most likely. It was always the most likely, statistically, and it was the one he had feared quietly for 2 years, ever since he'd started noticing the small things about Marcus that other people either didn't see or chose not to. The way Marcus's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly, when Emma made a joke at his expense in front of guests. The way Emma had stopped wearing the silver bracelet Daniel had given her for her college graduation, the one with an engraving that read "Stronger Than You Know," sometime around their first anniversary, and never explained why. The way she'd started saying "we" for decisions that used to be entirely hers, where to work, who to see, what to wear to things. Daniel had asked her about it once, gently, the way you approach a spooked animal, and Emma had smiled too brightly and said Marcus just had strong opinions. Daniel had let it go, because pressing usually closed doors rather than opened them, and because some small, cowardly corner of him hadn't wanted to be right. He was not going to make that mistake tonight. He parked 2 houses down, out of old habit, engine off, and studied the house in the dark for 11 seconds before moving. Lights on downstairs. 1 car in the driveway, Marcus's, not Emma's. Curtains drawn on the living room window, unusual for them. Emma liked the lights of the cul-de-sac. Daniel noted all of it the way he used to note the position of guards outside a compound, cataloging without emotion, because emotion was the enemy of good decisions, and he would need every good decision he had left. He walked up the path like a father paying a casual visit, hands loose at his sides, posture unthreatening, because the first rule of getting inside anywhere was to look like you belonged there. He knocked. It took 40 seconds for the door to open, which was itself information. Marcus answered it in a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled, a glass of something amber in his hand, and the particular smile of a man who has rehearsed being pleasant. "Daniel, hey, didn't know you were coming by." Marcus's eyes flicked just once toward the staircase behind him. "Emma texted me. Thought I'd swing by, see how the 2 of you are settling into married life." Daniel kept his voice easy, a little slow, the voice of a man who golfed on weekends and had never in his life needed to move faster than a brisk walk. "She's actually resting, bit of a migraine." Marcus didn't move from the doorway. "I can tell her you stopped by." "I'll just say a quick hello. Won't take 5 minutes." Daniel was already stepping forward, the motion so unhurried, so grandfatherly, that Marcus's body reflexively gave way before his mind caught up with the decision to let him. Inside, the house smelled wrong. Not of anything specific, just of tension, of held breath, of a space where something had recently happened and hadn't finished happening. There was a hairline crack in the drywall by the kitchen archway, freshly patched with spackle that hadn't been painted over yet, an amateur job done in a hurry. There was a dish towel on the floor by the sink, and beneath it. Though Daniel didn't look directly at it, you never look directly at what you've clocked, a faint dark stain on the tile. "She's upstairs?" Daniel asked, moving toward the staircase. "Like I said, she's resting. I'll just poke my head in." Marcus's hand closed around Daniel's forearm. It wasn't a hard grip. It was the grip of a man who believed, correctly, in his own physical advantage. 34 years old to Daniel's 61, 6'2" to Daniel's 5'10", a man who ran marathons and lifted weights 3 mornings a week, and had never once had to consider that being bigger and younger were not, in fact, the only variables that mattered in a fight. "I think you should head home, Daniel," Marcus said, and for the first time his pleasant mask thinned enough that something underneath it showed through, not fear, not yet, but the flat, entitled irritation of a man being inconvenienced in his own house. "This isn't a great time." Daniel looked down at the hand on his arm, then back up at his son-in-law's face, and something in his own expression must have changed, because Marcus's grip loosened by a fraction, some animal part of him registering a signal his conscious mind hadn't caught up to yet. "Marcus," Daniel said quietly, "I'm going to ask you one time to let go of my arm. After that, I'm not going to ask again." "Or what?" The word came out with a laugh in it, disbelieving, because what could this graying man in a golf polo possibly do? Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply rotated his wrist half an inch, found the seam in Marcus's grip where the strength was structural rather than muscular, and Marcus's hand opened on its own, the arm following it down and around in a movement so fast and so economical that it looked, to anyone who might have been watching, almost like nothing had happened at all, right up until Marcus was on one knee on his own hardwood floor, breath punched half out of him, staring up at his father-in-law with the particular disorientation of a man whose entire model of the world has just been proven wrong in under 2 seconds. Emma, Daniel called up the stairs, his voice unchanged, still calm, still the voice of a father at a barbecue. "It's Dad. Come down when you're ready, sweetheart." There was a long silence. Then footsteps, careful, uneven ones, and Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in an oversized sweatshirt, one hand pressed instinctively to her ribs, a bruise blooming high on her cheekbone in the exact shade that told Daniel it was maybe 6 hours old. She looked down at her husband on the floor and her father standing over him with an expression Daniel hadn't seen on her since she was small. Not fear exactly, but the particular relief of someone who has been holding a weight alone for a very long time and has just been told, without words, that she doesn't have to hold it anymore. "Dad," she said, and her voice cracked on the single syllable. "I'm here," Daniel said. "You're safe. I need you to get your phone, your purse, and your keys, and I need you to go wait in my car. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded and moved past them both, giving Marcus's kneeling form a wide, careful berth, the way you'd walk around a downed power line. Marcus, still catching his breath, found enough anger to push words out. "You broke into my house and assaulted me. I'm calling the police." "Please do," Daniel said, and crouched down to Marcus's eye level, unhurried, his voice dropping into a register Marcus had never heard from him before, flat, quiet, and absolutely certain. The voice of a man who had once, a long time ago and very far away, made decisions that ended other men's futures and had never once raised his volume to do it. "Call them. I'll wait right here. I'll even show them the marks on my daughter's face, and the blood on that dish towel by the sink, and the fresh patch job on your drywall that you did tonight because something hit that wall hard enough to put a hole in it. I'll show them the 2 years of texts on her phone where you told her what to wear and who she could see and made her feel small enough that she stopped fighting back. And then, Marcus, I'll let them ask you a few questions. About tonight. About whatever else they find when they start looking, because men like you are never as careful as they think they are." Marcus's face had gone the color of old paper. "You don't know anything about." "I know exactly what I'm looking at," Daniel said. "I spent 22 years reading rooms for a living, son. I read yours in about 4 seconds. He straightened up, adjusting his jacket with the small, unbothered motion of a man finishing a routine errand. "Here's what's going to happen. You are not going to contact my daughter. Not a call, not a text, not a message through a friend, nothing. Her lawyer will be in touch about the divorce, and I would strongly encourage you to sign whatever she asks you to sign, quickly and without complaint, because I promise you that the alternative, a courtroom, a discovery process, people asking you very specific questions under oath, is not a road you want to walk with me watching." "You're threatening me." "No," Daniel said, and for just a moment something surfaced in his eyes that made Marcus, still on the floor, instinctively lean back. "I'm giving you the only mercy you're going to get tonight. Take it." Emma cried for most of the drive home, not the racking sobs of a fresh trauma, Daniel noted with a hollow ache in his chest, but the quieter, exhausted tears of someone who had been crying, in small doses, alone, for a very long time, and was only now allowing herself to do it in front of someone who could actually help. She told him things in pieces, unprompted, the way people do when a dam finally gives, how it had started small, 6 months into the marriage, with comments about her friends, her job, the way she loaded the dishwasher. How it had built so slowly she hadn't recognized the shape of it until she was already inside it. How tonight had started over a delayed dinner reservation and ended with her locked in the bathroom, texting the one word she had promised herself she would never actually need to use. "I didn't want to believe it was that bad," she said, staring out the window at the streetlights sliding past. "I kept thinking," he stressed, "it's not that bad, other people have it worse." "You don't have to justify surviving something to me," Daniel said. "Not ever." "How did you do that back there?" Emma asked after a while, her voice smaller. "You didn't even, he's so much bigger than you." Daniel was quiet for a moment, hands steady on the wheel, weighing 11 years of careful silence against the look on his daughter's face. "There's a lot about your old man you don't know," he said finally. "Some of it I was never allowed to tell you. Some of it I just didn't want to be that person at home, the person from the job. I wanted to be your dad who burned pancakes and forgot your recitals were on Tuesdays, not the other guy." He glanced over at her. "But I want you to know something, and I need you to really hear it. The reason I taught you that word wasn't because I expected you'd ever need it. It's because some part of me has spent your whole life terrified that someday you might, and I wasn't willing to bet your safety on hopping I was wrong." Emma reached over and put her hand over his on the gear shift, the way she used to when she was small and carsick and needed an anchor. "Blueberry," she said, with something that was almost a laugh, wet and exhausted and real. "God, I can't believe that actually worked." "It worked," Daniel said, "because you're braver than you think you are. You found a way to ask for help even when you couldn't say the words. That's not small, Emma. That's the whole thing. That's everything." They drove the rest of the way in a silence that felt, for the first time that night, like it had room to breathe in it. Behind them, in a house with a fresh patch of spackle drying on the wall, Marcus sat alone on his kitchen floor, replaying 4 seconds of his life on a loop, finally beginning to understand far, far too late exactly who it was he had been facing all along. He would learn, over the slow and humiliating weeks that followed, that the quiet, mild man he'd shaken hands with at his own wedding had a file somewhere in Washington that no lawyer he ever hired would be able to touch, and a daughter who would never again mistake silence for weakness. Daniel, for his part, never spoke of that night again except once, years later, at Emma's second wedding, a smaller one, gentler, to a man who cried openly during the vows and asked Daniel nervously for his blessing before he asked Emma to marry him. Daniel had shaken the young man's hand, studied his eyes the way he studied everyone's eyes now, out of old habit, and found nothing there but plain, unguarded devotion. "Take care of her," Daniel had said. "She already knows how to take care of herself. I just want you to be worthy of standing next to her while she does it." And upstairs in a box in his closet, beside a case that held things Carol still believed were old tax documents, there remained a single index card in Daniel's careful handwriting. The ink faded now, but the words still perfectly legible. "Blueberry." He never threw it away. Some promises, he had learned, are worth keeping in writing, even after the danger has passed, even after the daughter has grown safely into the woman she was always going to become. Especially then.